Of
Jason,
course.
that's Jacob.
Yep.
Jason and Jacob. All right.
So that should be
Scott
easy.
here.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm the musician out of the two of us, so this is going to
Oh,
be quite a good interview for me.
okay, great. You're a music. What do you play?
I play drums. I mean, I've played bass and
Mhm.
some guitar, but I made some albums where I play bass, but mostly I'm a drummer.
Got it. Cool. Yeah. Big Jeff Porcaro fan by any chance?
Yes, actually.
Yeah, one of the great drummers, man. My
Oh
my
yeah,
brother, man. I miss that boy. Oof.
yeah. Did he pass away?
Yeah, oh yeah, he passed years, it's probably 10 years now, something
I
like
did
that.
not know that.
Oh yeah, Jeff's been gone, yeah.
Man, yeah. I used to when I was younger. I started playing drums in '91, and
Uh-huh.
I used to read every drum magazine I could get my hands on. And man, he was Jeff Porcaro was in like every drum magazine for
Oh, I
like
mean,
15 years.
legendary, man. I'll tell you, playing with that guy, that groove was so deep, it was crazy.
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh my God. He was my groove. We grew up, I was in a kid band with him when we were kids called
Really?
Merciful Soul Band. Yep.
That's awesome. Well,
Yeah,
let's
and
get
then
this thing started, man.
let's
I'm
go, man.
excited.
Let's talk.
All
Is,
right, here we go.
is there any,
In
I'm just gonna let you guys guide and then I'll just
awesome.
make noise with my face.
Oh yeah.
hey, that's all we want.
Hey, do we have an ad read or anything, Jacob?
No, just do Patreon.
You do it tonight. I did it last week.
Okay.
All right, here
All
we
right.
go.
Give me a
In
countdown.
three, two.
Hi, you're listening to Open Micers. I'm Jacob Craig, and we're all alone. Do you want to help us support this show? Do you like listening to us every week? Of course you do. You're here now, aren't you? Give us some money on Patreon, so we'll be here next week. And I love you.
I love you too.
I love you too. How we doing, guys?
Good. How are you?
Great, man. Happy to be here with you guys, hanging out. It's a beautiful day. I have my glass of wine with ice. I'm ready to go.
Wine with ice. I've never done
Yeah,
that
you know,
before.
I know it's like
Fancy
goofy.
stuff.
It's goofy, but I don't know. I like it now. I've kind of gotten in. It's red. They do that with white wine, but I don't know. I just kind of like it, and it kind of just waters it down and becomes a little sangria like, right? But I like it.
Oh,
Yep.
I like that. I might try that myself.
Come on.
But
First one's free, buddy. First one's
oh
free.
yeah, well it is Thursday night, and you know that music means it is open micers time. My name is Jason Robbins.
I'm Jacob Craig, and our guest tonight is a saxophonist and rhythm guitar player who has toured with the likes of Pink Floyd, Supertramp, and Toto. He is also an adjunct professor at the University of Southern California's Thornton School of Music and the CEO of media company Thank EXP. Guys, all those credentials, it can only mean Mr. Scott Page.
Woo!
Welcome to the show.
Ladies
Thank you
and
for
gentlemen.
being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, actually, I just want to correct one thing. Um, I was at USC. I'm not doing that. I came out and I taught some classes there, and then I'm not doing that anymore. So I'm not an adjunct professor there anymore, but I was. So I don't know the Wikipedia, wherever I guess you're getting that, they still say that that's the case, but hopefully they'll straighten that out.
Yeah, I
But
was gonna say, coming into this interview, I've been excited about this interview all week because you played with some of my favorite bands and musicians, and your resume is it's like a Lord of the Rings book. I mean, I don't even know where to start. There's just so much stuff here.
yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna start off with the obvious. You have played with some of the greatest rock and roll bands of all time. I mean, mainly one of the biggest, Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
So, just kind of tell me how that happened.
Okay. Yeah. That's actually a funny story. I've told this quite a bit. Um, I was playing with Supertramp, and we were doing a Supertramp album, and Dave Gilmore was brought on as a guest. So I was in the studio up at Rick's house. He had a beautiful studio in his house, Rick Davies, and Gilmore was there. He went and put the guitar solo on the Supertramp record, and we hung out. And then that night, I had a club gig just down the street that I do with this band I had at the time called the Hang Dynasty, which was Jeff Baxter from the Doobie Brothers, and a bunch of great players. And we came. So I invited him down that night. So he come down, hung out, and then I had another thing. A week later, I was doing this big show called the First Dance, which was a big production I was putting on at Guitar Center, Los Angeles, which was really experimenting with this whole idea that I was working with zooming microphones and kind of MIDI based tripod systems in order to create sound and picture. So I invited Dave down there. Well, it happened to be a week later, Jeff Porcaro, which we were talking about just a little while ago, was playing on the Pink Floyd record. And then he said, "Oh, I got to leave. My friend Scott, I've got this big show I'm going to do." He said, "Oh, yeah, Scott invited me." So he came with Dave. Dave and him came to the show, saw the show. A couple days later, I get a call to go put some solos on the Pink Floyd record. So I went into the studio, put the solos on, did all of that. That's, I did the session.
Which
Great.
record was
Left.
that? Which
That was
record?
a Momentary Lapse of Reason.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
the later years. I went and did that. And then a couple days, 2 or 3 days later, I get called, the English guy on the phone. It's Dave Gilmour. And he says, "Well, we're getting ready to go out on do this 2-year tour and stuff. And we'd love you to come join the band and all of that." And I said, "Yeah, Dave, let me think about it." Because here's the funny part. I knew nothing about Pink Floyd. I mean, really nothing other than I think I said, "Geez, I think I heard a song, Have a Cigar." I remembered hearing that once, but I really knew nothing. I was, coming out of the school of, being a saxophone player. I was more into R&B and funk and, Junior Walker and studying all my kind of R&B and rock guys, but I never really paid much attention to the, sort of that psychedelic kind of the Floyd stuff. So I said, "Yeah, Dave, let me think about it." So I called some friends of mine up and I called my one buddy up and I said, "Yeah," I said, "I played on this record last week. I did this Pink Floyd record." He said, "You played on a Pink Floyd record?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah." And then Dave Gilmour, he's the guitar player, I said, and he called me up and wants me to go do this tour, but it's like go out on the road for 2 years. And I'm like, "God, man, that's like leave 2-year gig. That's a big, long commitment."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Dude, you got to do that gig." I said, "I don't really know much about that. What's the story?" So he starts telling me about him. I said, "Wow, it sounds cool." So I went to Tower Records that night and bought some records, brought them back, listened to them. And I said, "Oh, okay, yeah, sounds good." But everybody I talked to, they said, "Dude, you got to do that thing." So I called Dave up. I said, "Okay, I'm in, let's go." And thank you, God, for me. I had no idea at the
So
time.
how many
But that's how that
rehearsals?
happened anyway.
How many rehearsals did you do before heading out on that tour, or was it one of those
Oh,
things you
well,
were kind of thrown to the wolves?
Well, it was interesting because the tour we rehearsed in Toronto in an airplane hangar out on the tarmac at the international airport. So we'd have to go there and we'd have to get shuttled out in between 747s, to get out to this place. Big giant thing. And when I went in there, I remember the first day I went in there, I walked in, I went, "Oh my God, look at this, man. There's flying pigs and there's all this crazy stuff. The wildest lighting, it's just a massive stage, like just insane." And I look behind me, I'm looking at this, and then I look behind me, 745s are going by the window. And
Wow.
I finally said, "Boy, this is crazy cool." And, like I said, I'm very thankful for that gig and it was great. So we rehearsed, I think we were rehearsed. I can't remember, was it maybe 6 weeks, something like that, some kind of thing like that before. And then we did our first shows in Toronto. I be honest, I don't really remember exactly how long the rehearsals were, but it was a trip. It was definitely a trip.
I can imagine that was probably anxiety inducing before
Well,
going.
what's so fascinating about Pink Floyd for me was it's actually the easiest job I've ever had because Dave said, "You play solos, all just here's point to me and play," right? And so it was a cake gig, and he never really told me what to play, which I really appreciated. He always
That's cool.
wanted me to wear my own clothes. He didn't want me to be, like Dick Perry, the original guy. And although I would always take and play a little bit of Dick Perry in the beginning of the solos, so that there was people that know those songs would do it, but then I would just take my own thing and make it up. But yeah, it was that was a great gig. I just played solos, and then I played rhythm guitar and stuff on that too, and that was always fun. I mean, I used to love to just kind of during Comfortably Numb stroll over and stand in front of Dave's amp in front
Yeah.
when the solo was rocking, right?
I
Oh my
used to
God, that
be
was the
in a.
greatest feeling was hearing that freaking guitar amp in my bag. The greatest tone in the world, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
Dave, he's really one of my music guru mentors. I mean, I learned a ton from him, and the main thing I learned, and he basically changed all my playing because he's the master of melody, of
Yes.
feel and melody, right? It's not like you never see him with all that stuff and
Mhm.
nothing can follow, but he always plays those beautiful melodies that anybody can pay attention to. You can all
Yeah.
hear them. And it's so interesting because when you hear like Comfortably Numb, if you don't hear that guitar solo in the middle, it's like there's somebody didn't sing the lyric,
Yeah.
right? The words were left out. So he really made me start to think about how to play in a different way. So I really tried to be much more musical and set from a point of view of being more melodic and try to play things that people could hear. And I've taken that with me ever since, because I think that's really for me is really important.
Yeah, not and I think among guitar players, David Gilmour is held in such high regard, but for like the
Man.
general public, he's very underrated. Like not a lot of you say David Gilmour, not a lot of people know who you're talking about unless you say Pink Floyd, then they're like, "Oh, yeah,
Right.
yeah." But, that's why that guy ends up on every single, top, 100 guitarists of all time or whatever. Like
Oh,
that
yeah.
dude is just he's one of those people kind of like he's like Eddie Van Halen. Like you hear him play and it's him. He's got that
Oh, yeah.
tone, he's got that, that feel. Like everything he plays is like, oh yeah, that's David. You could pick him out anywhere.
Well, that's always the state. But if you think of all the great musicians, they have something of their own sound. They've got their own thing. They kind of, it's unique in its sense. And same with singers and everybody else. When you hear that unique tone, sound, vibe, feel, and Dave is definitely, has his thing. And I mean, all the great guitar players I know, look to him for that type of playing for that when they're in that space. But yeah, Dave's incredible. Incredible.
Yeah, and to be in your position, to be, right along with that guy and just have, learning, just soaking up everything like a sponge is just, that's an opportunity of a lifetime, man.
Getting up there and trading fours and stuff with them, blowing on tunes together. It was crazy cool, right?
That's amazing.
Obviously. Yeah.
And I'm hogging the interview again, Jacob. You got
Come
some
on,
questions?
Jacob.
He always does this. He always does this, especially when we have musicians and actors. He thinks he's the only one here. You're not, Jason. Take a drink of water, buddy.
Fine.
All right, here he comes. I'm in the hot seat now. I can tell.
You're in the hot seat now. So your dad was also a musician, a saxophonist, Mr. Bill Page.
Correct.
He, for people who don't know at home, played with the Tonight Show band for Johnny Carson.
Well, actually, my dad, let me go back. My dad was a performer on the Johnny Carson show, but he was I grew up on television on a show called The Lawrence Welk Show.
It's a Lawrence Welk.
The Lawrence Welk. Everybody remembers that was one of the early shows when there was only 7 channels on television, right? And it was a weekly show on the weekend. And I guess one of the funny parts about that is my biggest one of my claim to fame is I'm the only guy that played in Pink Floyd and Lawrence Welk, right? So I had to, because when I was a little kid, we used to do the Christmas shows and stuff like that, and I'd come out and play stuff with my dad. That's when I was a trumpet player before I was a saxophone player.
That sounds like a Jeopardy question.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of funny. Who is the one guy that played with Pink Floyd and Lawrence Welk? That is a Jeopardy question. Da-da-da, drum roll, please. We know who that is. But yeah, my dad actually started the whole concept of amplified wind instruments, right? So he started that whole deal. And he had started in that band. It was the Bill Page Ampliphonic Orchestra. He was, you ever heard of the Studio Sound City?
Yes.
Right.
Okay. That's where I grew up. That was my dad's studio originally.
Really?
It was called the Vox Sound Lab, where he developed, believe it or not, him and Brad Plunkett developed the wah-wah pedal.
Really?
Right. Yeah. So he was the inventor of the wah-wah. And actually, that very first recording of the wah-wah was done on a bassoon. And the song was called the Wah-Wah Doozy. And I actually just found a box of these things, all these 45s of that original wah-wah song. But the reason I'm bringing that up is when you mentioned the Johnny Carson show. So this was a kind of a big deal, this new amplified instrument, the wah-wah pedal. So my dad was brought on guest several times to do as a performer on the Tonight Show. So he wasn't in the Tonight Show band, although he was over at NBC staff and did a lot of shows there later on, because he was a really incredible musician. And he did the light opera season at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion and did studio sessions and stuff for years. But that's how the Tonight Show thing happened.
Got you. My mistake, as you can
tell.
No,
I just don't want people to think that I get it goofed up there. That's all. Be clear.
Oh no, I'm an amazing interviewer. I'm so good at my job.
Dude, Jacob, man, I got to tell you, dude, I have to say, I've done quite a few of these. That this is definitely one of them.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But anyways, My core question was, did your dad ever come home with any, crazy stories about his performances or Johnny Carson or anything like that?
Oh, I mean, it was interesting, because in those days it was all about the big band, right? There was big bands. It wasn't like the standard, rock was just sort of coming in back there in the early 50s, right? And well, 50s rock was happening, but big bands were still big, right?
Right.
And so actually he did he was because he traveled for years, he was also with Judy Garland and traveled with Guys and Dolls back in the day. And so there was all these stories, and he actually did a pilot for a television show, which was actually one of the first or second shows ever shot on videotape. And it was a
Hmm.
pilot, and it was called Music Man Take 10. And it was all about the stories that my dad gathered and all these guys while touring with big bands around the country. And it was like funny things. The bands, they get on the bus and they'd all play their instruments and they did
Hmm.
all this stuff. But he always told me stories that one day the tuba guy got outdoor and blah blah blah, and he hit the button, the drawbridge went up. So there were some stories. There's a few that I shouldn't really talk about because I don't want to incriminate. But anyway, yeah, uh, you know. It was different then, right? It was, the big bands were not quite like, hardcore rock and roll, drugs, sex, rock. And so it was a little different back in those days. Although there were some pretty crazy scenes that would go on in the jazz world, but, mostly, I'm trying to think of any crazy stories that he told me, I can't think of any really just that would be the Twitch crowd would love. Let's say
Yeah, I
that.
can't really imagine Lawrence Welk getting crazy with the backstage.
Well, oh yeah, I mean it wasn't that, but I mean interesting thing because when we were on that show every year, the Dodge Corporation would give everybody in the band a car.
Really?
We'd
That
get a
must
new
be
car
nice.
every year. Why that would happen? And then I remember one year they got everybody the same color car, right? Everybody had the same car, the same color one, right?
Oh,
And so when they pulled in the parking lot, this is a big band, it's 20 something pieces plus everybody else, and you could never figure out which cars were yours.
oh
Wow.
no. That's
um,
definitely a corporate oversight.
Yes.
so did your work with Pink Floyd lead to work with Toto, or
No, I
was that
actually played with
beforehand?
Toto early on. I mean, my first kind of big gig that was there was with a band called Seals and Crofts.
Hmm?
So I played with Seals. I toured with Seals and Crofts. I played with them for a few
Summer
years, 3 4 years.
Breeze.
Summer Breeze, yep. And then I went off and I started conducting for David Soul. I don't know if you remember David Soul. He
David
was the
Soul.
Don't Give Up on Us, but Starsky and Hutch.
Yes, of course.
Right, you
Yes.
remember? Yeah. So he was one of the two guys, and David, and we toured the world with him, and I was conducting for him at the time, and kind of put the band together. And let me see. Then I went to let's see. From that, I played with a variety of different people. Everybody. I did gigs with Chuck Berry and James Brown, and it just go as a player out there doing things. And then I got into I started playing with Diana Ross. That was
Really?
it. I played with Diana Ross, and while we were in Vegas, I got a call from Bob Siebenberg, who was the drummer in Supertramp, who I'd met a few years back at a club that he used to come into and hung out. And they needed some for Supertramp, so I flew back to LA on my day off there, audition, then got the Supertramp gig. And then I did Supertramp for from 80 to 80. We did the 80 tour, 83 tour, 85. So up from 80 to 85 ish. And then in between that, I got called to play with Toto, which was a real thrill for me because I mean, those guys musically was, they're
Oh
about
yeah.
as good as it gets. Jeff and David Page and Lukather and Mikey and all of them. It was just a great band. That was actually an incredible band. Jeff
Mhm.
Porcaro. I'm like I've always been a time. I'm crazy about time, like the groove and the time. And I eat, drink, sleep metronomes. I had one of the first 5 Lynn drum
Mhm.
machines. I was so crazed about it. I remember I have to wait to get that, and I got it at the beginning. But really about the time. And so when I got to play with Jeff, it was interesting because people asked me what was the best part of playing with Toto, and I said I got to play cowbell with Jeff Porcaro on 4 tunes, which was the greatest. Because I mean, dude, it was almost like sex. Because the way he'd groove, I mean, we'd sit there and I was
Mhm.
up on this riser here, right next to him, and we'd just freaking boy, that you could just feel that
Oh
stick
yeah.
sinking into the groove, right? And he would just lay it down. And it was so fascinating because you as a drummer, I mean, he could take each beat, it's maybe 2 and 4, but the way he slides the kick drum a little behind, puts the thing a little front,
Mm-hmm.
just these little things. And so, yeah, that was great. So Jeff, and then he had Toto, and then from Toto, I started. I've been a serial entrepreneur. I started these companies, and from that, it kind of moved into, I forgot how I got the call. I mean, with when we did that other Supertramp record, and then Dave called me. I went playing the album. That's how that all kind of came around. Yeah.
So did you get to know Diana Ross at
Oh
all?
yeah, she was actually interesting for me. She was probably one of the biggest mentors to me of all the people.
Really?
I mean, I learned a lot from her. She was what was fascinating when I got called to do the gig, and I was just did this big project, and I had my studio in the house, and I really didn't want to go on the road, but I got called to do this gig, and I figured I can go out for a couple months and make some money. I wanted a new console for my studio, so I'll go out and do that, right? So I went out there, and I remember going into the first day when rehearsing in New York. I walked into the rehearsal. She wasn't there, and when she walked in the room, I could not take my eyes off of her. Her magnetism was
Mm.
like something I'd never ever experienced. There was something about her that was just totally different. And I'd worked with celebrities and did things and
And
been
that
with some
voice.
amazing people, but there was something about her presence that was so fascinating. And I couldn't understand it because it was just like the way it was, right? So I remember the first night on the gig, we went out and I was playing in a horn section on that gig, right? And I was trying to read the charts and I kept looking up because I wanted to check her out. I was trying to see what it was about her, right? I was trying to, because I look for patterns. I'm one of those kind of pattern. I use
Hmm.
that as a way to kind of learn things about stuff. So I want to find things that I can replicate. And so I look for things that people do in that sense to kind of help me. So I made so many mistakes that night on the gig. So I went back and for the next 2 days, I studied the book and memorized it so that I could just watch her. And I started finding and seeing patterns because we'd be in there, we'd be doing 16,000, mostly arena kind of a tour.
Mhm.
And she would, every single night, she could get everybody on their feet and just rock it. She just owned the audience. And I started noticing things that she would do that were very interesting because as a performer, I was trying to get my performing chops
Hmm.
together and I wanted to better my thing and figure out what my thing was, right?
Yeah.
So she would do things like she could get the whole audience rocking and she'd be up there and one night maybe she's not even her voice isn't that great or whatever, but she was such a great performer. But what she did is she started doing things like she would find somebody in the first front row, right? And she would drill them,
Hmm.
right? Make sure that they knew that she was communicating directly with her, right? Creating that relationship. And the front row, and she'd get a group of people there, and she would communicate, and they're like, "Whoa, they noticed me. It's unbelievable." And she would do it, and she would go through the audience, and she would do this. And if somebody was in the back of the stadium holding a sign, she would recognize you at the sign, right?
Hmm.
And she would just basically go through and do all of that. And I was like, "Wow, what a cool thing," right? So that was a great trick. And then the other thing that I noticed from her is that the way she was a good dancer, but she wasn't like, Jennifer Lopez, a full
Yeah.
blown dancer kind of a person, but she moved good and stuff. But what was so interesting is the way she stood. The way she angled her body, the way she stood. It was so pleasing to just see
Hmm.
her when she was there. She just had this grace about the way she stood and everything. And I started realizing I had that saxophone strap around my neck, and I'm like, man, I can't get cool, right, with that thing around my neck. So I went out the next day and I said, I got to do something. I said, I'm gonna try something. So I went to the guitar store and I found a stretch guitar strap, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so I put that around, like a body strap, because then I could play my horn. I could take that saxophone, I could push it down, right? I could
Hmm.
I could take my saxophone, I could push it down, and I could get myself so I could get my angles of my body right, like look cool, right? And so that helped. And then the third thing was is I always noticed her hair when she was flinging her hair the way it did and how it caught the light. So that's when I grew that crazy ass mullet I had for a million years. I don't know if you saw some of those pictures when I played with Spinal Tap in New York, and there's some pictures online, and my hair was down past my butt, but I had one of the original mullets.
Yes.
And they're coming back now. Don't forget.
Well,
it was
I had
goofy,
one.
but it's starting to come.
I had one when I was younger. I'm gonna admit I had one. So I don't know if Jacob had one. He's only like 12 years old. So.
He's ready for his first one.
I'm growing one. Yeah.
Come on, brother.
I'm in the midst of growing a mullet. That's what the hat's covering up right now.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's that long, short look, right? You can have it. Because that was the problem. I didn't want hair because it was always in my eyes. So I said, well, maybe I'll just keep this part short and go this way. And that was early before. I mean, there really weren't many mullets around at that time. I can remember. I would think I was even before Achy Breaky Heart guy, right?
I do have a conspiracy theory question I need to ask you real quick.
Since God, here we go.
You knew Diana Ross. What do you know of the rumors that she was actually Michael Jackson's mother?
Oh, I've never heard that. That's kind of hard for me to.
Yeah, I haven't heard that either, Jason. You idiot.
I mean, you could definitely see. Jason. You could definitely see that they could be, but no, I don't think so. I'm not sure.
There's just a conspiracy going around these days that she was actually Michael Jackson's mother, and I can kind of see it, but I don't know. Maybe.
Mm-hmm. Maybe, right. But I'm not sure I'd go for that one yet. That one would take a little more, but again, I'm free thinking enough that bring it, show me how that worked. Great. Cool.
There was one thing I wanted to ask you about, and you formed a company called Seventh Level. Yeah. And it was like a software company that you guys did some sort of almost like video game type stuff. And one of the things you did was it's called an edutainment thingy, CD-ROM for Monty Python's Complete Waste of Time.
Yeah. So that company was very interesting. That actually probably my favorite thing that I'm most proud of is we did a title. It's called Toonland, and it starred Howie Mandel, and it was the world's first interactive cartoon. And so I directed that and produced that, and we built the technologies. My partners was Bob Ezrin, who produced all the Pink Floyd records, and a guy named George Grayson, who was the CEO of a 20th largest software company. And we saw multimedia coming along, and we got to do that. And one of the groups of titles we did, besides the Great Reading Adventure, the Great Math Adventure, and all those Howie titles, we did all the Monty Python series. So I got to work with the Pythons. I actually worked with the Pythons for almost 18 years.
Wow.
Because we ended up building out Python line and kind of built all that stuff for them. We did those CD-ROMs. I was very proud of those. Those CD-ROMs we won lots of awards with those. That was some of the hottest games at the time, were those Python series of games. And that company was incredible. We started 18 months later. We had this dancing broom that we were able to prove our technology, because we wrote all the technology, because it was running on top of Windows. Because Windows back in those days, it was DOS. All the gaming was done in DOS and that kind of thing. And then Mac came along and kind of added that graphical user interface. Yeah. And then Windows came along and kind of did the same thing on top of DOS, right? So that was the idea, but there was really nothing there that could really make it work very well, because we were dealing with 386 25 megahertz machines, right? Which is nothing with 4 meg of RAM.
That was actually one of the first computers I had.
Was that 4 meg of RAM? Yep. And we had to figure out how to make animation and stuff. Well, luckily we had built my partner George Grayson. He big software guy. Their Micrographics was his company, and was, like I said, at the time, 20th largest software company in the world. He designed and built out the very first Windows program for the Windows PC. It was called Windows Draw. So he was really early days with Gates and all that kind of stuff. And I met him. And so what happened when we started the company together, he was able to bring part of his team along with him of the best engineers. And they had all worked on Windows. They actually were the team that turned actually wrote a program called Mirrors, which was Windows that would run on top of the OS2 operating system by IBM. OS2 was trying to make a play to be the next sort of Windows, and they made a deal. So these guys knew the source code. Right. They knew Windows source code, which was great. And they were engine guys. So we were able to write a little engine that would sit on top of Windows that they knew how to make it work. And we could have all this animation and stuff that we were able to do. So
That's awesome.
we did this very first animated stuff. And then we got into the Monty Python series. We took that company public. It was a NASDAQ company. And it was a great ride. That was really a fun one. Yeah, it was fun, man. Those days of multimedia were great. I was hanging out with Timothy Leary and, all these cyberpunk guys in their garages and stuff, writing code. And it was like a really exciting time and very, very interesting moment. And I was really glad that I got to be, a part of that. And actually there's one of my other favorite things is there's a book out by Pioneer out of where is it? It's Pioneer Publishing or whatever. And it talks about the 50 pioneers of multimedia. And I'm one of those.
Wow.
One of the 50 guys,
So I just got the Zoom warning that we're coming up on the end of the meeting.
We're zooming it up, brother.
So Jacob, any last questions for our guest tonight?
So I saved the hardest hitting question for last, obviously, of course.
Uh-oh.
What do you think about the conspiracy theory that Howie Mandel is actually Jason's father?
I know Howie, and he told me the whole thing. He did. He told me the whole deal. I'm telling you, dude, I know we don't have any time left.
Now I know where I get
that story is incredible. So I'll have to come back and talk about the Howie Mandel story. And it's not a conspiracy, buddy.
Now I know where I get my germophobia.
You can notice they got the same haircut, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Same haircut.
And I have a habit of putting gloves on my head and blowing them up.
You're very good at that, dude. Very nice.
So, man, Scott, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you tonight. I really want to get you on the show again because we haven't even scratched the surface of all the cool stuff that you've done. But just as a parting question for you, what is the one piece of advice you would give anybody, getting into the music industry just to do half the cool stuff that you've done? What is the advice?
I think the most important thing is to figure out how to, there's a lot of things. I think today, especially, because I think this is one of the most incredible times as an entrepreneur I've ever seen, because there's so many problems that need to be fixed. But I think really artists need to start thinking, they've got to realize they can't sell music anymore. Can't sell music. There's no place to sell it. They can't sell CDs, can't do that stuff. So I think it's really important that they start to learn business. They need to start taking. So I would say, start learning from those people that do it. Start learning about lean startup principles, start learning about growth hacking, start getting educated. I actually teach, the thing I taught was called SPACE, Story Plan Army Conversion Education. So I'd say approach your business like an entrepreneur, learn from those companies that have specific, there's ways of doing all this stuff now that once you get yourself educated, because this is a great time, man. With this device, you've got a worldwide broadcaster in the palm of your hand. Real-time two-way is changing everything. I can build audience. Twitter's a 24-hour cocktail party. I can take the order. Don't be worried. There's incredible opportunities for musicians right now, but they have to get educated. So I think the most important thing is really to start learning how to be a business person. Doesn't mean you have to do all the work. You might need to build a team, but you at least need to get yourself educated in that, because sitting around smoking fatties and writing songs all day, it's a little tough when you don't have that record business, right? It's a different kind of a game. So those that will take advantage of what we have in front of us now, because all this tech and everything, it's embedded in everything. And this is a great time in a lot of ways for certain kinds of musicians that want to really stretch out and turn themselves into business.
So do you have any social media that you do regularly, or
all my handles are, it's all IAM Scott Page, IAM Scott Page. Think Experience, which is the immersive entertainment company, which is really cool. We didn't get to talk about that much, and we're getting ready to launch Livin.live, which is a whole thing. And I'm getting really excited about that, because we're reinventing how where's the new entertainment biz going? How's it going? And I believe that it's going to be based on several things: a live performance, but that's going to be limited on people and things, how that's going to be based in this new kind of COVID world. Streaming, but really focusing on the two-way parts of streaming. How do I bring fans and marry fans from in a live situation with fans that are out virtually and in video thing. And then the third one is we're taking, you realize I can't hand you something through the screen, but I got a delivery service. So I can actually deliver you things before the show. So an example for you guys, you would be in like, oh, hey, I'm meeting up with Scott. Well, Scott got a package and it's like a cool thing from your sponsor or whatever. And then we get to talk about an experience. It might be wine taste, it might be some kind of thing, but starting to bring that concept of interactive television together. This is really experience-based medium right now. And I think that opportunities in this space are incredible, especially hyper local. Right. I think there's opportunities for local things where you can incorporate local vendors and things and be able to bring stuff delivered and tie a show together and, you know, get the streaming, bring fans into the stream. And yeah, I'm very excited about the space. And I think, you know, I don't think anything's going to go away. You know, if you look at it, we basically condensed 5 to 7 years of where we thought as a technologist, I thought we would be where we are right now 5 years from now.
Yeah.
The user behavior has completely changed because we all got thrown into this Zoom and FaceTime and a whole new way we're going to operate. Right. So, you know, we can't resist what has happened because what is. And so we have to look for new opportunities. And what I would tell all the artists out there, I know it's hard, but right now, because there's so much confusion, that's where the innovation and where the opportunities are lying. While everybody's going, oh, what am I going to do? I lost everything. It's over. What am I going to do? You know, so for an example, for me, the day that we found out was everything. We were getting ready to do Jazz Fest this year with Think X, which is the band that's part of Think Experience. We were doing Jazz Fest here. We were going to Europe. We were in the midst of working to put up this 1,600 seat massive immersive theater in downtown Long Beach. And the next thing, everything, it was over. Right.
Yep.
So I got up in the day, and here's my biggest thing is the most important thing anybody can do is my favorite subject is consciousness, right? And reality and all of that. And really, if you understand that the only thing's real is us talking right now. Mm-hmm. Everything else is an illusion. 2 minutes ago, done. I can only remember what happened. I can't touch it. Totally illusion. 2 minutes from now, maybe. I don't really know, right? And so the only thing that matters is the step you're taking right now. So when I got up, I just said, okay, everything didn't happen. I lost all these gigs, all our revenue gone, but those were illusions too. They were only thoughts in my head. I don't know. I might've went to New Orleans and fell down and broke my head. I have no idea what would have happened there. Right. Yeah. So I just said, that's it. So I just started thinking, well, where's the market going to go? What is happening right now? What is going to happen? And obviously being lucky enough to be in the tech space for so many years and being a tech guy, that's my thing. And I could see how technology is going to change all this and how we're going to be able to, you know, basically teleport fans in a sense to all types of venues. So I just started really working on that concept. And like I said, I think the business models are great. Remember, it only takes, the 1,000 true fan model artist. A true fan is somebody that'll spend $100 a year on you. If you have 1,000 fans that will spend $100 over a year, there's your first $100,000 in revenue. So anyway, start learning, get out there. Google is your school. You can learn a ton, go to town. I see our thing is going to run out, and here we go.
Well, thank you for joining us tonight, Mr. Scott Page. It's been absolutely awesome. We'll have you on again. Yes. I promise. I want to have you back here.
Anytime, man. It was fun talking to you guys, and thank you very much for having me on your show. And yo to all the Twitchers out there.
Yes, thank you guys.
Thank you for coming.
If you want to email us at openmicerspodcast@gmail.com and give us money at patreon.com/ompodcast.
Give those guys money.
Yes.
Give them money. We need to keep these guys on the air.
Yes, I agree with that. Oh, that was great. Like I said, we're running out of time, so thank you so much, Mr. Page. We'll have you on again soon because I got a lot more things to ask you about.
Have a good Thanksgiving, man. We've got a lot to be thankful for.
Absolutely.
Everybody be thankful. Be thankful.
Thank you.
You too. Right, thank you for coming on.
All right, my friends.
That was awesome.
Yes.
Let me go ahead and end the stream. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll see you sometime next week. We're not going to do it on Thanksgiving, so we'll have a show sometime next week. Thank you, guys. We'll see you later.